The moment the door opened, the small orange cat froze on the windowsill and stared straight at the three visitors standing in my living room, and I knew this was not going to go the way they expected. My name is Daniel, and for the last 6 months I had been hosting a group of alien exchange students who called themselves the Valkyrie. They were here on a cultural program, studying Earth from the inside, instead of just from their orbiting research ship. They were polite, careful, and endlessly curious, but they had one strange blind spot. They believed every animal humans kept in their homes was a servant. The three standing in my house that evening were named Oren, Talia, and Cass, names they had picked for themselves after studying human television. Oren was the confident one, always first to speak. Talia carried a small device that recorded everything around her. Cass stayed quiet most of the time, watching before acting. They had spent weeks studying videos of dogs sitting, rolling over, and running to fetch a ball the moment their owner pointed a finger. To them, this was proof of a perfect servant species, living happily under human control. They had written an entire report on it for their final project, calling Earth pets fully submissive companions who existed only to obey. I had tried to warn them more than once. Not every animal is like a dog, I told them. Some are very different. Oren had simply smiled in that polite alien way and said their data was clear and that humans were only being modest about their control over these creatures. That evening, they asked for one last demonstration before submitting their report. They wanted to see a domestic Earth animal up close and record its behavior for their final presentation. I agreed, half amused, and invited them to my apartment, where my cat Biscuit ruled every inch of the space like a tiny orange king. The instant they stepped inside, Biscuit did not run to greet them. He did not wag a tail or bark or beg. He sat perfectly still on the windowsill, his tail flicking slowly, his eyes locked on the strangers like he was deciding something important. Oren stepped forward first, holding up his recording device. According to our research, he said, direct eye contact combined with a firm vocal command should trigger an immediate submissive response. He looked straight at Biscuit and said, "Sit." Biscuit blinked once, slowly, and then looked away toward the window, completely ignoring him. Talia frowned at her screen. The command produced no measurable reaction, she said. Perhaps the tone was wrong. Oren tried again, deepening his voice this time, repeating the word "sit" with more force. Biscuit turned his head back toward Oren, studied him for a long moment, and then jumped down from the windowsill and walked past all three of them without a single glance, heading toward his food bowl in the kitchen. Cass laughed quietly, but Oren was determined. He believed in the data. He believed the report they had spent weeks preparing. He followed Biscuit into the kitchen, kneeling down to appear less threatening, just like they had read in an old training guide about approaching dogs. He held out his hand, palm up, offering a small treat I had given him earlier. In every recorded observation, Oren said, offering food establishes trust and reinforces obedience. Biscuit walked closer, sniffed the treat, then looked up at Oren with an expression I knew very well. It was the look he gave right before he did something completely on his own terms. He took the treat gently from Oren's hand, ate it in one bite, then turned and walked away again, tail held high, as if to say the negotiation was over and he had won. Talia's device beeped rapidly, numbers scrolling across her screen. Subject accepted the offering, but displayed no increase in cooperative behavior, she said, sounding puzzled. This does not match the pattern from the dog recordings. I leaned against the wall, trying not to smile too wide. That's because cats aren't dogs, I said. They don't work the same way at all. Oren stood up, brushing off his knees, still not ready to give up. There must be a proper method, he said. Every species responds to a correct combination of authority and reward. We simply have not found it yet. He turned to Cass and Talia and suggested something new, an approach based on how their own species established leadership among themselves. On their planet, dominance was shown through posture, standing tall, moving with confidence, and holding a steady, unblinking stare. It worked on every subordinate creature they had ever studied back home. Oren walked toward Biscuit, who was now sitting calmly near the couch, grooming one paw without a care in the world. Oren drew himself up to his full height, squared his shoulders, and stared directly into the cat's eyes without blinking, exactly like the manuals from his world described. For a moment, nothing happened. Biscuit stopped grooming and looked up, meeting Oren's stare directly. The room went quiet. Even Talia stopped tapping on her device. Then Biscuit did something none of them expected. He stood up slowly, arched his back, and took one deliberate step forward, closing the distance between them. His ears turned slightly, his tail swished once, sharp and controlled, and he let out a low, warning sound that was somewhere between a growl and a hiss. Oren took a step back without meaning to. I saw it happen, his confidence cracking for just a second. Talia's recorder beeped loudly, and she stared at the screen with wide eyes. "The readings are inverted," she said, her voice rising with surprise. "The subject is not registering us as dominant. The subject is registering us as the ones who should be backing away." Cass, who had barely spoken all evening, suddenly laughed out loud. A real laugh, not a nervous one. "I told you both this animal was different," she said. "Look at how it moves. It is not afraid. It is deciding whether we are even worth its attention." Oren straightened his jacket, trying to recover his composure, but his eyes never left Biscuit. "This contradicts everything in our study," he said quietly. Every recorded dog interaction showed clear submission markers. Lowered head, wagging tail, eyes averted. This creature shows none of that. "That's because you were only looking at one kind of animal," I said, stepping closer to explain. "Dogs and cats come from very different histories. Dogs became close partners with humans a very long time ago, learning to work together with us, to read our signals and cooperate. Cats came to us on their own terms. Nobody tamed a cat the way people tamed a dog. Cats decided humans were useful enough to live near, and that was the whole arrangement from the very beginning." Talia looked up from her device, clearly fascinated despite the tension in the room. "So this animal chose to live with humans," she said slowly, "but it never agreed to obey them." "Exactly," I said. "Cats came into human homes because we had food stored in one place, which meant we also had small pests nearby, and cats are excellent at handling those. They stayed because it worked for them, not because anyone commanded them to." Oren looked down at Biscuit again, who had settled back onto the floor, watching the three visitors with calm, unblinking curiosity, as though he had already lost interest in whatever they were trying to prove. "Then explain this," Oren said, gesturing toward the cat. "If this creature does not obey, does not fear us, and does not need us for protection, why does it still choose to remain in a human home at all?" I thought about that for a moment before answering. "Because it likes being here," I said. "It likes the warmth, the company, the safety, even the attention, when it feels like giving any. But make no mistake, if Biscuit ever decided this home was not worth staying in, no command or method would keep him here. He stays because he wants to, not because he has to." Cass nodded slowly, seeming to understand something the others had missed. "That is a very different kind of relationship," she said. "Not master and servant, but two creatures agreeing to share a space, each for their own reasons." Talia finally set down her device, looking almost overwhelmed. "Our entire report described Earth animals as fully controlled companions," she said. "If even a small house predator like this maintains its independence while living peacefully among humans, then our conclusions about your species managing all its animal life were completely wrong." Oren was quiet for a long moment, watching as Biscuit stretched, yawned, and casually walked over to rub against my leg, purring loudly, showing affection entirely on his own timing, and no one else's. "If this is how your smallest home predator behaves," Oren finally said, his voice quieter than before, "then I wonder what we would learn from studying the animals you have not invited inside your homes." I smiled at that. Maybe that's a project for next semester, I said. The three of them stood there for a while longer, watching Biscuit groom himself, with total indifference to everything that had just happened, completely unaware, or perhaps completely aware, that he had just rewritten an entire alien research paper without lifting more than a single paw. Before they left that night, Talia asked if she could record just a little more footage, not for data this time, she admitted, but because she found the little creature strangely wonderful. I said yes, and we spent the rest of the evening watching Biscuit ignore every one of us with magnificent confidence, occasionally allowing a gentle scratch behind the ears, as if granting us a great favor. Weeks later, I learned that their final report to their research ship included a new section, one they had not planned to write. It described Earth not as a planet where humans commanded submissive companions, but as a planet where humans lived peacefully beside creatures who could easily choose independence, yet decided, again and again, that staying close to us was worth it anyway. And somewhere in that same report, in careful alien handwriting, was a warning for any future visitors approaching Earth. Do not assume gentleness means weakness. Do not assume quiet means agreement. And whatever you do, it said, never, under any circumstance, try to establish dominance over a cat.